Okay, we're continuing with the Holy Grail of Wisdom quotes by me, Pete Rogers, alphabetical order. Thomas Babington Macaulay. He was an Englishman in the 1800s, early to mid 1800s. He was of Scottish descent. Here's some quotes about him. First by Lord Melbourne. I wish I was as cocksure of anything as Macaulay is of everything. Lord Acton. Thomas Macaulay. Oh, by the way, the reason why Thomas Babington Macaulay was so famous was he wrote this History of England that was super popular. Big bestseller. Everybody read it. He was also a Scottish politician, articulate guy, but his History of England made him very famous. It was considered the greatest history written, and it was sort of in competition with Edward Gibbon for him being the two greatest historians of England up to that time. So here's Matthew Arnold's quote. Oh, well, he says other things about him too, Lord Acton. Thomas Macaulay is not only the greatest Englishman living, but the most representative Englishman now living, in 1856. He remains to me one of the greatest of all writers and masters, although I think him utterly base, contemptible, and odious for certain reasons which you know. Okay, Matthew Arnold. The immense popularity of Macaulay is due to his being preeminently fitted to give pleasure to all who are beginning to feel enjoyment in the things of the mind. Okay, he was a brilliant guy. He was an academic prodigy, a self-taught polyglot, spoke multiple languages, and his style of writing was sort of over the top. But people like that. You know, and I've talked about that before in writing styles, is that when you're in a conversation, you can do all kinds of things. You can tip your head one way or the other, raise your eyebrows, use hand gestures, change your voice, speed, loudness, pitch, etc. So you can do a lot to communicate the meaning. But when you're writing text, the text is there by itself, just words and punctuation. So, you know, a little bit of drama to it, exclamation points, things like that, you know, a pause with a colon, a pregnant pause. All of these things liven it up a little bit. Hyperbole, if you will. It makes it more entertaining. Okay, Thomas Macaulay quotes himself. What an incalculable debt we owe to that little speck of land, Greece. The principles of taste, the finest models of composition, the doctrines and the glorious examples to which we owe political freedom, the arts, the sciences, architecture, sculpture, everything that is great and splendid in literature and politics, must ultimately be considered as derived from that little peninsula. So that shows you, in those days, everybody, you know, just knew the thing you should study is the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans, and they held the Greeks in the highest respect. From the Greeks, you learn greatness and creativity and beauty. From the Romans, you learn power and politics. Okay, next quote, also about the Greeks. Whenever literature consoles sorrow or mitigates pain, wherever it brings gladness to the eyes, which fail with wakefulness and tears, and ache from the dark house and the long sleep, there is exhibited in its noblest form the immortal influence of Athens. Yeah, they held Athens in the highest esteem, despite the fact these were very smart guys. And you hear the same thing coming out of Germany with Schopenhauer. They felt that the people in Athens of ancient Greece around 400 BC, there must have been something in the water. They were so incredibly intelligent, well beyond the men of these times. Okay? All right, so we got some more quotes by Thomas Babington Macaulay. He says, the measure of a man's real character is what he would do if he knew he would never be found out. I can tell you, if I had enough money, I got to work because I'm a chump, I'm a wage slave. You know, my wife stole all my money. But if I was a free man and I could study, I would just study every day because I want to write my books and clarify my ideas and understand more things. That's what I want to do. So that kind of tells you what your character is, what you would do if you were free to just do it rather than have to work in some tedious job to make money. Okay, he continues, Thomas Macaulay. I have long been convinced that the institutions that are purely democratic must sooner or later destroy liberty or civilization or both. And I would say you need Christian ethics. Otherwise, everything sort of decays and a powerful, ruthless person just takes over the institution and corrupts it to their will. That's why you need Christian ethics or things just go down the tubes. Okay, the most beautiful object in the world, it will be allowed, is a beautiful woman. We can't help it as men. We're just programmed to love women. We love the way they look. We love the way they sound. We're just programmed that way. And it works to the woman's advantage because they don't like us that much. They want to get one of us to pay their bills, but they think we're a little bit smelly, disgusting, and scary. Okay, next quote. Politeness is benevolence in small things. Nothing except the mint can make money without advertising. How well Horatius kept the bridge in those brave days of old. Okay, so we're going to talk about that in a moment. We'll come back to that about Horatius, who fought on the bridge over the Tiber. He fought off the Etruscans like Lars Porsena and his men to give the rest of the early Romans of those days time to disassemble the bridge so that the Etruscans attacking them could not get over it to sack Rome. All right, so we'll come back to that in a moment. Thomas Macaulay, people who take no pride in the noble achievements of remote ancestors will never achieve anything worthy to be remembered with pride by remote descendants. Okay, so that's a good point. So what I'm saying here is this guy Macaulay wrote a history of England where he greatly praised England, and it was super popular. Everybody loved a history that praised their country, England. And what I'm saying is this is the opposite of modern America. Nowadays in modern America, if you praise the great founding fathers and the great achievements of America in the past, they're like, oh, you're conservative, or you're racist, or you're sexist, or some other BS. And it's all this gaslighting nonsense used by this hand, you know what that is, the left, to, destroy the place. It's normal for people to love their country, to be patriotic, to be proud of their country. Okay, that's part of a country that's continuing to improve. But, when somebody wants to destroy a country, they try to turn the people against the history of their own country. And that's what's happening in the United States these days. Okay, Thomas Macaulay. Now, here's a quote that surprises me a bit. After he says all those great things about Greece, listen to this one. The more I read Socrates, the less I wonder why they poisoned him. Okay, a rather extraordinary quote. And then he says, okay, well, let me scroll up. So he does say some surprising things. Here we go with this one. The doctrine of all sects, I would say except Christianity, is simply this. I am in the right and you are in the wrong. When you are the stronger, you ought to tolerate me, for it is your duty to tolerate truth. But when I am stronger, I shall persecute you, for it is my duty to persecute error. Okay, Thomas Macaulay. Even the law of gravitation would be brought into dispute if there was pecuniary interest involved, money interest. Yeah, and so that's what you see with the low-fat vegan diet. It's in dispute, even though the evidence is overwhelming, because there's no money in low-fat vegan. The money comes from selling stuff and high-fat foods, high-protein foods. Okay. So now we're going to do his poem about Horatius. Horatius was the brave Roman soldier who held off the Etruscans single-handedly for a couple moments, just necessary, precious moments that the other Romans could disassemble the bridge over the Tiber River and thus protect Rome from being attacked, sacked, sieged, and destroyed. Okay, so here's his poem. Then out spoke brave Horatius, the captain of the gate. To every man upon this earth death cometh soon or late. And how can man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods, and for the tender mother who dandled him to rest, and for the wife who nurses his baby at her breast. So those last two lines are a little bit anticlimactic, but still it's an extraordinary quote there. And it's good to people remember these historic, heroic individuals who protected their country, their freedom. Okay, and that's another reason why people love Macaulay. He would remember these stories. Okay. All right, next quote by Macaulay. How is it that egotism, so unpopular in conversation, should be so popular in writing? Western literature has been influenced more by the Bible than by any other book. Yeah, everybody knows that. The Greeks, the Romans, and the Bible. That's what people should know at a minimum, just to have a minimum education. Okay, George Macdonald was an author. I think he wrote like the equivalent of fairy tales in his day. C.S. Lewis really liked him. So here's one good quote by him. A beast does not know that he is a beast. And the nearer a man gets to being a beast, the less he knows it. Okay. Now, Heather Macdonald. Heather Macdonald's a Scottish descent lady who is pretty famous in conservative circles, but the internet hates her guts, man. There's a few spots online where you can find her quotes, but for the most part, she's been scrubbed from the internet. All the popular quote sites, they do not include her, despite the fact she's a very well-known published author. Okay, she kind of reminds me of Wilmore Kendall, who's also banned from the quote sites. So these quote sites, when you go to these internet quote sites, they are not giving you a reasonable, fair-minded distribution of famous people in literature and history and achievement and philosophy and sociology in general. They are not they are totally biased towards this hand, the left. They really are. Because I look at many thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of quotes, and I can assure you, when I'm reading conservative authors, I have to take the quotes from their individual books versus when I'm going to somebody who's not as conservative-minded, so to speak. I can just get their quotes very easy. They're on tons of sites all over the internet. So this is what you're seeing as a biased favoritism of that type of content. Okay. You can find her quotes on Goodreads, for example. Some of hers, for example. It's real hard to find Will Kendall's. Okay. All right, John D. Macdonald quotes, "The dividing line between friends and acquaintances is communication. A friend is someone who you can say any jackass thing that enters your mind. With acquaintances, you are forever aware of their slightly unreal image of you, and to keep them content, you edit yourself to fit. If the cards are stacked against you, then reshuffle the deck." This was not some pretty little girl, coyly flirtatious, delicately stimulated. This was a mature female of the species, vivid, handsome, and strong, demanding that all her life within her be matched. Her instinct would detect any hedging, any dishonesty, any less than complete response to her, and then she would be gone for good. So I think that's funny, is that men, they're attracted or they're not attracted. They know instantaneously if they're attracted to a woman or not. And, men, we just talk. We don't really think that much most of the time. We enjoy just being able to talk and say whatever we think without filtering it, so to speak. But what I'm saying is there's something about talking to a woman. A woman does this mini mental status test of a man. And he senses it, and you're talking to this girl, and all of a sudden you can tell she has a change of attitude. Her attitude goes negative towards you. And you know that there was some mini micro shit test that you just failed, okay? And it's funny because I talked to this one really pretty girl who I once almost dated many years ago. And I sort of just bumped into her socially by accident, And I talked to her briefly, and she was real nice, but I tell she gave me a little snotty little attitude that she thought she was above me, and sort of I know I hadn't expected to see her. I was caught by surprise. I wasn't looking my best, and I could tell she had that snooty little attitude that she was still above me in some way. And it was kind of funny because by this time I was long married and all this other stuff, but she still was judging me in that sense. Anyways, it is true. Men know exactly what I'm talking about. There's this little game played whenever you talk to a woman. She does this mini mental status test and judges you. Are you worthy to be considered a potential romantic partner of me, or are you beneath me? She decides that too. With a man, he's either attracted or he's not. He doesn't even think about that. With a woman, it's are you worthy of me? Yes or no. It's weird, but they do that. Ross Macdonald, "The walls of books around," and by the way, they're usually, quite often women are totally delusional about how attractive they are, okay? They overestimate themselves, and I think they tend to underestimate the man. But it is true, sort of the energy, the confidence that you radiate when you first meet them, they totally sense that, and they immediately put you into a category real fast. Okay, "The walls of books around him, dense with the past, formed a kind of insulation against the present world and its disasters." Ross Macdonald, okay. For an intellectual man, they said, his library is like his harem. Some guy said that. I forgot who said that. Harvey Mackay, 1932, big businessman, he said, "You win more friends with your ears than with your mouth." People who feel like they're being listened to and feel accepted and appreciated, they feel like they're being taken seriously and what they say really matters. Okay, if you are persistent, you will get it. If you are consistent, you will keep it. A dream is just a dream. A goal is a dream with a plan and a deadline. Okay, that's good. And then here's my favorite quote from Harvey Mackay. "If it is to be, it is up to me." Yeah, because that's what you realize. You kind of hope all these people will help you, and then you'll get support, or you'll get funding, or you'll get award. And then you realize nobody's going to help me. Nobody cares. A lot of powerful people actually hate me and will block me. So basically, I have to do this on my own. So I'm either going to do it or I'm not. So I want it to happen. I'm going to make it happen. I mean, that's the thinking I go through for lots of stuff because, it's just how it is. Anyways, I hope you found those quotes helpful.